Jasmine Crockett had been doing that second kind of preparation. For weeks before this hearing, she had been moving through the documentary record of the Department of Justice. Decisions made under Bondi's leadership, official explanations offered for those decisions, correspondence that surrounded those decisions, and the places where the official explanation and the documented sequence of events did not fit together the way the public presentation suggested they should. And somewhere in that record, she found the thing. Not a theory, not an inference. A specific, sourced, dated piece of the official record that, when placed in sequence with other specific, sourced, dated pieces of the official record, told a story that the DOJ's public narrative had not accounted for. She organized it. She designed the sequence. She decided how to deploy it. And then she went to a congressional hearing and sat across from one of the most experienced legal and political operators in the country and prepared to use it. Now let us talk about Pam Bondi, because understanding who she is and what she walked into that hearing room as is essential to understanding why what happened next landed the way it did. Bondi did not arrive as a novice. She was not someone unfamiliar with high-stakes settings or the particular pressure of being questioned by people who want to find something damaging. She came from a prosecutorial background. She had served as Attorney General of Florida for 8 years. She had operated at senior levels of federal political life. She knew how these hearings worked, not from a distance, but from direct experience. She knew how to establish authority in a room before a single question was asked. How to project the kind of institutional confidence that signals to everyone present that the person in the chair is in control of the exchange and intends to remain there. She carried all of that into the hearing, and it showed. Through the opening hours of the session, she was exactly what her background had built her to be: fluent, composed, strategically responsive. When questions came at her in broad strokes, she answered in broad strokes with the ease of someone who had prepared those answers and believed in them. When committee members pushed at her from a political angle, she moved with their momentum rather than against it, giving answers that technically responded to what was asked while communicating nothing that could be used against her. She was managing the hearing. Not just surviving it, managing it, shaping it. Using her position and her composure as instruments of control the way experienced operators at her level always do. That is the Pam Bondi who was sitting in that chair when Jasmine Crockett's turn at the microphone arrived. There is a quality that fills a hearing room when certain members pick up the microphone. It is not universal. Most questioning cycles do not produce it. But Crockett has built enough of a record in these settings, a consecutive string of hearing moments that have made her one of the most watched figures in congressional oversight, that the room responds to the transfer of control to her the way it might respond to a sudden change in air pressure. You feel it before you can explain it. The reporters, who had been in motion all morning, typing, checking phones, rotating between assignments, went still. Committee members who had been managing multiple things at once gave their full attention to what was happening at the microphone. Staffers who train themselves to maintain professional neutrality, regardless of what they are witnessing, found that neutrality harder to hold. Not because anyone announced that something significant was about to happen, but because enough of them had seen enough of her in these settings to recognize the specific quality of attention she brings when she has something real. She opened the examination without revealing the destination. This is another form of preparation that most people overlook, knowing where to start so that the ending lands where you need it to land. Her opening questions were precise, but not yet alarming. She was establishing facts on the record, getting Bondi to confirm specific claims that seemed individually unremarkable, building the foundation in public, in sequence, in a way the witness could not yet see the shape of. Bondi answered those opening questions with the same confidence she had projected all morning. The territory felt familiar. Nothing in the line of questioning appeared, from where she was sitting, to be moving toward anything she had not prepared for. Then, the questions began to sharpen. The factual specifics became more particular. The direction of the examination became more clearly oriented toward a fixed point, even if that point was not yet visible. Experienced witnesses feel this kind of movement the way people feel weather changing before the clouds arrive. The barometric pressure of a hearing shifts when the questioning is moving toward something real. Bondi's answers remained confident, but became more careful. She was still in the exchange on her own terms, but some part of her professional instinct was registering the direction of travel. And then, Crockett stopped. Not the hesitation of someone searching for a word or losing a thread, a chosen stop. A deliberate pause with a specific communicative purpose that everyone in the room registered as meaningful before anyone could articulate why. She looked directly at Pam Bondi. Steady, unhurried, with the specific quality of focus that belongs to someone who has just arrived at the threshold of the moment they built everything to reach. And she said 4 words. "You won't like this." Quiet. No performance. No aggression. No theatrical inflation of the moment. Just the plain, direct language of someone giving a genuine warning person to person. Because the warning is true, and because the person receiving it deserves to know what is coming before it arrives. What happened in the room in the seconds after those 4 words is almost impossible to fully capture in a transcript. The stillness that fell was not the ordinary quiet of a hearing room between exchanges. It was the stillness that falls when a room full of people simultaneously understands that something real is happening. Not political theater. Not the performance of conflict that these settings regularly generate, and that experienced observers have long since learned to process as background noise. But something that exists outside the frame of performance. Something that the warning itself had already confirmed was real. Because that kind of warning is only given by someone who has the goods and knows it. Bondi's response to those 4 words was its own data point. She did not brush it off. She did not perform the dismissive confidence that a witness with nothing to fear would deploy. She looked at Crockett with the expression, multiple people in the room described it in almost identical terms later, of someone who has just been told something they recognize as a credible threat, and who is deciding, in real time, what their options are. The composure held. Composure at her level does not dissolve in a moment. But something inside the composure reorganized itself, and the people close enough to observe her closely saw it happen. Then Crockett laid it down, not in a rush, not in a single dramatic reveal. She presented it the way an attorney presents the central evidence in a case to a jury that needs to understand not just the fact, but the significance of the fact. Methodical, sequential. Document by document, each one introduced with the context that made its connection to the next one legible, each connection building a picture that the individual pieces had not made visible on their own. The first document established a specific fact about a specific departmental decision, unremarkable in isolation. The second established another specific fact that added context to the first without yet revealing the full picture. The third drew those 2 facts into relationship with each other in a way that the DOJ's public account of the decision in question had not acknowledged, and suddenly the shape of what Crockett had found began to come into focus for everyone in the room. And then she asked Bondi to explain it. Not in the broad strokes of departmental policy. In the specific terms that the specific documentary picture she had just assembled demanded. Responsive to the documents. Responsive to the connections between them. Responsive to the gap between what those documents showed and what the official narrative of the decision had claimed. Bondi answered. She had to. Declining a specific documented factual question in a congressional hearing when the underlying evidence is already in the official record is not a position an attorney general can occupy and maintain the appearance of transparency that the role requires. She answered with precision and skill. She addressed each document. She offered an interpretive framework for the connections Crockett had drawn. She argued that the picture Crockett had assembled, rather than undermining the department's official account, was in fact consistent with it when understood correctly. It was a well-built answer. Better than most witnesses would produce under that kind of spontaneous pressure. And Crockett had anticipated every word of it. She had not just found the documents. She had war-gamed the defense. She knew the specific interpretive move Bondi would make to try to bridge the gap between the documented reality and the official narrative. She knew the legal reasoning that would be deployed to make that bridge appear solid. And she had prepared for it the way you prepare for testimony you know is coming. Not by hoping the defense will fail, but by having the specific evidence ready that demonstrates exactly why it does not hold. Document 4 arrived at the precise moment Bondi's answer committed her to the specific interpretive position it was designed to address. Document 5 closed the alternative explanation that Bondi's framing had pointed toward. And Document 6, the one she had been building toward from the moment those 4 words left her mouth, was the piece that, placed alongside everything now in the record, made the gap between the official story and the documented reality not merely visible, but undeniable. She did not characterize it with inflammatory language. She did not declare victory with the kind of rhetorical flourish that would have given the other side something to argue against. She presented it, connected it to everything that had come before it, and asked the question that was now sitting at the center of the room with the full evidentiary architecture Crockett had spent weeks constructing underneath it. The silence that followed belonged to a different category entirely from any other silence the hearing had produced. It was not the silence of shock in the dramatic, theatrical sense. It was the silence that descends when a room full of people simultaneously understands that something has just been permanently established on the official record of the United States Congress. The thing Crockett had assembled, that specific, documented gap between what was officially claimed and what the record showed, was now there, in the record, with its sources cited, with its documents entered, existing in a form that no subsequent press release or official statement or media appearance could reach back and remove. Journalists who had been processing and narrating all morning went still and just wrote. Because what had just happened was specific and layered enough that capturing it accurately required full attention, not the simultaneous narration that modern coverage runs on, but genuine focused recording of a moment in the old sense. Bondi's response to the 6th document was professional, composed, and entirely in containment mode. The years of experience were visible precisely because they were preventing something that less experienced people might not have been able to prevent. But the register of her answer had changed. She was no longer advancing an argument. She was limiting damage. And the distance between those two modes of operation is audible to anyone who listens carefully. And audible, as millions of people who have watched the clip since have discovered, even to people who have never attended a congressional hearing in their lives. But here is what deserves to be examined beyond the moment itself, because it is easy to watch the clip and focus on the collision and miss the thing that made the collision possible. Crockett warned her. That is the detail that most people, on first viewing, find puzzling. If you have evidence that powerful, why signal it in advance? Why give an experienced, well-prepared opponent any additional time at all to prepare? The instinct most people would follow in that position would be to maximize surprise, to arrive at the destination without the warning, to deny the witness every additional second of mental preparation. Crockett did the opposite, and the warning made everything that followed more powerful, not less. Because a warning like "you won't like this," delivered in that tone, in that manner, with that stillness, does not communicate what the speaker is about to do. It communicates the quality of what the speaker has. It signals, to everyone in the room and everyone watching at home, that what is coming is real enough that advance notice changes nothing. It says, "I am so certain of the strength of this evidence that I am willing to give you time to prepare for it, and I am still certain of the outcome." That is a specific kind of confidence that cannot be performed. It can only be held by someone who has actually done the work, who has actually gone deep enough into the record, who has actually assembled an evidentiary foundation solid enough that warning the witness before using it costs nothing, because nothing the witness can do in those few seconds changes what the documents say or what they mean when placed in sequence. Very few people in any arena, legal, political, or otherwise, operate from that position. It requires a quality of preparation that most people in high-profile public settings never actually achieve, because the shortcuts are always available, and the surface preparation is always enough to generate the appearance of engagement without the substance of it. Crockett achieved the substance. She went all the way to the bottom of the record. She did the work that takes weeks rather than hours. She built the foundation before she laid the floor. And when she finally sat down across from the Attorney General of the United States and issued that 4-word warning, it landed the way it landed, because everyone in that room understood at a level below articulation that a person who is bluffing does not warn you before they show their hand. What lives in the permanent record now is not just a hearing moment. It is a documented, sourced, officially entered demonstration of a specific gap between what was publicly claimed and what the assembled record shows. A gap that exists now in a form that can be cited, referenced, built upon, and returned to by oversight investigators, by journalists, by legal advocates, and by future congressional proceedings. That is what weeks of real preparation produces. Not a clip. Not a moment. A permanent entry in the official record of the United States Congress, placed there by a congresswoman from Texas, who told the Attorney General exactly what was coming before it arrived, and who was entirely right about every word of the warning she issued. 4 words. Weeks of work. A permanent record. And now you know every single layer of how it came together. If this breakdown gave you the full picture, if you now understand not just what happened, but why every piece of it landed the way it did, hit that like button right now and share this with someone who needs to see beneath the surface of what that clip actually shows. And if you are not yet subscribed, this is the moment. We are going to keep doing exactly this, taking the moments that matter and walking you all the way through them with the depth and the detail that they deserve. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we will see you in the next one.